Hello, everyone. How are you? Nice to see everybody.
Hello.
Thanks for coming out tonight. I'm Justin Waldman, he, him. I'm the artistic director here at Two River. Thanks for coming to tonight's In the Know for Dial M for Murder with our director, Jenn Thompson.
Hello.
Appreciate you all being here. If you can't see around the cameras, you can come to the outside, or if you want to come closer, I feel like no one ever wants to sit in the front row, so it's okay. We don't bite. Yeah, that's about all I got. So excited for this production. We open on Friday. We're in previews tonight. Jenn has been amazing to have with us, and I'm going to give a little bit of her background and embarrass her for a moment. So please bear with me, because she has an incredible bio, has done an incredible amount of work in this industry. She is a former actor, a producer, artistic director, and a director. Jenn has served as the co-artistic director of Off-Broadway's The Actors Company Theater from 2011 to 2015. Directing credits there include Abundance, Lost in Yonkers, The Late Christopher Bean, Bedroom Farce, among many others. Her international tour credits include Annie, that's currently touring North America, as well as Macau, which that sounds awesome. Her New York directing credits include the aforementioned Annie, starring Whoopi Goldberg, that was at the Madison Square Garden Theater, as well as multiple productions at the Mint, the Abington Theater Company, Rattlestick Theater. She's also developed work with NAMT, MCC, Primary Stages, and the Barrow Group, among others. Regionally, she's worked at most every American theater that there is. They're from Arizona Theater Company all the way through Dorset Theater Festival, where she is a resident director. And she was also the 19 seasons with the Connecticut's award-winning River Rep, where she served as producing director, working on over 50 productions. All of this work across the country has garnered her many, many awards and nominations. I'm going to try to go through some of them. Off-Broadway's Alliance Award for Best Revival, a 2012 Drama Desk nomination for Best Revival of a Play, a New York Times Top 10 pick, Lortel nominations for Outstanding Revival, 5 Drama Desk Award nominations, including Outstanding Director and Revival, multiple Connecticut Critics' Choice Circle Awards for Outstanding Director, Outstanding Musical, and she was a 2012 finalist for SDC's Joe A. Calloway Award for Excellence in New York City Directing. Her list of awards is longer than my entire bio, which is really awesome. She lives in Brooklyn with her husband, Steve, who is an actor, and her wonderful daughter, Naomi. Everybody, Jenn Thompson.
Hello.
All right, yeah, okay, hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Oh my God. So you come from a theatrical family.
I do indeed.
All right. Can you give us a little background on that? Was there any question that you were ever going to be part of the theater world? Did you ever have a choice in this?
Well, it's interesting because you would think, since both of my parents were actors, that they would be stage parents, but they were actually not that way at all. And it was sort of like joining the circus. It was a sort of, if you can't beat them, join them sort of scenario for myself. They actually made it look really fun. And it was really, the legend is in my family is that I had gone to summer camp the summer I was 6. I broke my arm. I couldn't swim. I was miserable. The next summer came around. I was 7. My mom said, what are we going to do? We're going to go to camp. I said, I absolutely refuse to go to camp. And she said, you have to do something. You can't sit around all summer. And I said, get me a job.
In a job, like a theater, an acting job.
I think her response,
Give me an agent.
I think her response was, what kind of job? And I said, I want to be in a play.
So what was that job?
That job was a production of Rip Van Winkle up in Tarrytown, New York. His estate is up there, Washington Irving's estate. So it's called Sunnyside Restoration. Wonderful place to visit. And they were doing a production of Rip Van Winkle on the property, like in a tent behind it was magical. And that was, she went and bought Backstage, which is the trade paper for actors looking for work. And there was a little ad, happened to be out of nowhere, that said Little Girl Wanted, which I still have. And if I ever write a memoir, that will be the title. And really, I think I got it on the strength of my reading. because I was a very strong reader. And back in those days, back in the old days, people were just learning to read at that age. So I read early.
So you went to one audition, you booked it.
I went to one audition and I booked it.
All right, so you're already winning.
I was winning right away, yes, and then completely besotted. Like one show in, and then that was it. And then they were really into it. I think they were into the sort of, I mean, it's my husband's an actor, but his father is a dentist, and I always try to explain it to people. It's like I became a dentist. Do you know what I mean? Like I went into the family, but it was, it was just sort of.
Did you ever get to act with your parents?
All the time. In fact, the theater company that you mentioned in Connecticut is a theater company that my family ran for 19 seasons. We would do 5 shows a summer, and it was really kind of. It was an opportunity that came to my parents as sort of producer, manager actors, and it was a way to keep the family together. They thought, well, if we take this theater over, at least we'll be together in the summer. Everybody was always all over the place working. I have a brother that's also in the business. And they were like, if we do this gig, then at least every summer we'll come together and make theater.
That's amazing. So all those 50 productions, you were all working on them together?
Yes, some combination of them. And there was way more than 50. I think by the time we were done, it was like 97 shows we had done. But my participation was in about 50. But it's the first place I directed.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. Like, how did you move from an actor to a director?
Well, I mean, I kind of hit a place as an actor where I was sort of second guessing the director in my head. I would be in rehearsal and thinking to myself, don't they realize I've got to pick up this coffee cup, or we're going to have to go back and restage this whole, I was sort of in my head about it. And that was the opportunity, that theater. I did a lot of stuff there. Some of it was just born from necessity. When we first started running that theater, we were doing everything. I was cutting gel for lights. We were running the box office. I was doing wigs. I mean, it was very, I have a barn, let's make a theater kind of theater experience. And it was sort of the natural place to try. It was a safe place to try it out.
It's amazing how many directors get into the directing chair from being an actor or being backstage in some way. Because that's amazing thing about you as a human and as an artist, like how you are able to relate to everybody that's on the team. And it sort of comes from, I'm assuming, having been in those shoes. Without
a doubt. And it was a great experience. One of my many jobs there in those 19 years, about maybe 8 years in, we were like, we need more formal help. I mean, we would have a staff. And I founded an intern program there. It was like a professional internship where I would recruit young people, usually actors, but all kinds of technical people as well from across the country, and they would come for the summer, and they would cycle through every discipline. So you'd work on one show, you'd work electrics, another show you'd work costumes, you'd be in one show, like that kind of thing. And I think it's the best way to learn, and that's a lot of how I learned a lot of stuff too, just by doing it.
And just a hands-on experience.
Just a hands-on, and really knowing like, these people climb really tall ladders. I was like, that's not for me. I won't be doing that again. One time.
Yeah, the ladders, I'll leave that to somebody else.
Somebody else can do it.
So in that way, like having experienced so many productions at a young age, like it makes so much sense in your career that you've worked on musicals, plays, new plays, classics, all the things under the sun. Like you have such an eclectic and diverse range of work, where a lot of times directors are like, I'm a new play director, or I'm a musical director. Like how, what is a show, what attracts you to a show when you have the facility to work on everything?
Well, one of the many things I love about this job so much is the diversity of it, and it's a new place, or sometimes you get to return to a place, which is also great. But new company, new cast, new staff, new play, or new, old play. So it really is like the story, and I love. Sometimes I will choose, if I'm lucky enough to choose, something that will feel like a departure. Like if I've. I didn't really start doing musicals until about, it's like 2016, really. And then that sort of opened up in a way, which was great, because it was a lot of opportunity and a lot of work, and I love doing that. But, I'm always trying to kind of balance my diet of what I'm doing that way. And so I might think, I would really rather do a play. I don't want to do another musical right now, or the other way around.
Well, it's like not getting into one lane so that you can keep.
And I mean, it just keeps. I think a lot of directors, and it's a great way to make a living. You do a production that's successful, and then a lot of other theaters might ask you to do that production. You know, you have a different cast, but you go and repeat it. And I've really almost never done that because I think it would be boring. So I want to do something different. So I've only repeated 2 shows ever.
Well, what are those 2 shows?
I did that. You mentioned Abundance, which is a Beth Henley play, really quirky, fantastic Beth Henley play that I did at Hartford Stage in Darko's first season. He's the artistic director there. I had never heard of that play. Really liked Beth Henley's work, but I didn't know that play. I fell in love with the play, and I was the artistic director of TACT at the time, and I did that play then, like maybe 2 years later, off Broadway in like a 99-seat house. So like Hartford Stage is a 800-seat thrust theater, and then I did that play in a 99-seat proscenium. It felt very, very different.
What did you have to do to swap it up from one to the other?
It was one of the best experiences I've had because I thought both productions were great. This play takes place in Wyoming, the Wyoming Territory, and I had I had a different cast, but the same design team, and it was including many people that are on this show, people that have been with me for a long time. And it was such an interesting exercise because we had all these bells and whistles. We had a big revolve. We had all this stuff at Hartford, and then we did it at Teeny Tiny Tact with like $1 in a dream, and we had to reduce it. But in some ways, it was even more effective. It was like that play in close-up. It was really fun to do, and it was a great reminder of what is essential. Yeah. What do you have to have?
Yeah, it's always fun how I always find like having limitations actually sparks creativity.
Without a doubt.
It's like then you just become literal. I don't know, the car flies, so fly the car. But if you got to do it,
it's that thing too. You get tempted, I think, especially if you've done a lot of sort of bootstrap, scrappy theater, where you go to a place that has a lot of resources and you all of a sudden can do something like and I often have to check myself and ask myself, okay, well, but do you need to do that? Will it make it better to do that? And so that was a great example sort of in reverse because it went from a sort of a big supersized thing to this sort of postage stamp experience.
That's amazing.
It was cool. It was really fun.
So this is your first time working at Two River, but it's not your first time being at Two River, or your family's first time. Can you? This is a great story. We were just talking about this. Can you give us a little bit of the Thompson family history?
The Thompson family history. So my parents were both actors. I came to see a play, and I have to call my brother and ask him because I can't remember what the play was. But my dad was in a play here at, I guess, Monmouth University when it was still there. And then my mom was in a play when it was in the other theater. Where was that? There. Right. She did Uncle Vanya there. And then I also saw another friend in a play at that space, too. But when I came to the first day of rehearsal and came up in the elevator and came into our break room with this beautiful, like, full kitchen, beautiful, great break room, there was this big poster of Uncle Vanya. And I thought, what a great, my parents have passed away. It was a great sort of tap on the shoulder from my mom. So it was lovely. And I remember being really knocked out by that production. And the guy that played Uncle Vanya, who's in the poster, and in a picture in the theater down, over here, ended up becoming like a family friend and performing in many shows at River Rep, which is the Connecticut.
So what a small world.
Lots of weird ways that it all intersects.
And the things that you just don't know until you know, too, which is amazing. It's super cool. So let's talk a little bit about why you are here in Dial M for Murder. Can you tell us, for those who don't know, what the show's about?
Oh, I want to know. It's about... well, do you want to say all the things it's about? Because there's so many surprises. It takes place in the 1950s in London, and it's our heroine is a woman who has had a love affair, and is trying to kind of put things right with her husband, and then, unbeknownst to her, her husband is planning her demise, has found out about her affair, and is plotting to kill her. And you find that out relatively soon. So it's interesting because it's not a classic whodunit. It's not Mousetrap. You're not waiting to find out who the murderer is. You know what the story is that way, pretty much up front. But it has a lot of cool twists and turns in terms of, will he get caught? How will he get caught? What's going to happen?
It's not a who, it's a how.
That's right.
A how done it.
It was so fun today because in the last couple of audiences, 2 matinees, very vocal, lots of, what? Oh no. Somebody said today, oh no. Which I love.
That's great.
I love it. I
always love the vocal response.
Somebody also, oh my God.
So the play is really well known for the movie adaptation of the play. So the original plays, for those who don't know, the original Dial M for Murder was a play by Frederick Knott. That was then a very popular play that was then adapted by this little-known filmmaker named Alfred Hitchcock into a movie. So then, so the history of the play, it actually goes from play to movie, and now we're back to a play because this is a new adaptation of the original Frederick Knott play. And so I'm going to hijack for a second and talk a little bit about me. Sorry. When I at my previous job at the Old Globe in San Diego, we were working on trying to find like big titles that would be really interesting for our season. And Dial M for Murder was something that came up, and we gave it a read, and we're like, man, the plot's great, but these characters are terrible, and it's really dusty, and it kind of just is a little bit clunky. And we said, well, what if we wrote a new adaptation of it? So what we did is we reached out to Jeffrey Hatcher, who you'll see on the program is the adapter of this production. And he had actually made a big name for himself adapting a previous Frederick Knott play called Wait Until Dark, which had a big Broadway run. It's been all over the country. So he had a relationship with the Frederick Knott estate. And we talked to him and said, hey, would you like to adapt another Frederick Knott and do Dial M for Murder? And he said, yes. So this is where this production comes from. This script is a new adaptation that was commissioned, I think, in 2019 out in San Diego, and then we premiered it in 2022 after a slight break for COVID. And then now it is one of the most produced plays in the United States. Yeah. So it's doing really great. But sorry for the background.
Good call for Jeffrey.
Yeah, Jeffrey is very happy
smart. Jeffrey's
right now. He is getting what is called residual checks.
He sure is.
So what was that's my history with this piece. What was your history with the piece before? Did you know the play? Did you know the movie?
I did know the play because we did the play. I was not in it or really a part of it other than just on the team at River Rep. So we did do it there, of course, the musty old version, which was, pretty clunky, but well received and fun. And I knew the movie because, it's Hitchcock. It's a pretty famous Hitchcock. It's Grace Kelly in that red dress. And I grew up with parents that insisted that I watch a lot of old movies. So I knew it from them. But I had seen it at River Rep.
Oh, fantastic!
That's the only time I've seen it. Yeah.
Well, so it's so fun that so many people know the movie but don't even know that there was a play, which is great.
The play and the movie are pretty close.
Yeah, they're real tight.
It's pretty close.
So how, without maybe a spoiler alert, but how does the new version change the original? And in one of the big reasons, and I'll preface this with one of the big reasons that we asked for an adaptation of the piece is that Grace Kelly's character Margot in the movie and in the play really is a cipher. She looks great and the dress is so perfect, but mostly what she does is say, "What? Huh?" There's not a lot of agency to the. Oh no! There's not a lot of agency to the character, and we felt to put a heroine on stage as the lead of a show that really doesn't get to advocate for herself was not something that would be well received in 2022. So a big part was trying to say, how do we get Margot to have agency in this story? And so maybe I'm answering my own question.
Well, I'll tell you something that I think is really cool about this adaptation. And I mean, maybe I sort of knew it before, but certainly being in the room with it every day. What's cool is that if you do know this play, or you think you know this play or the movie, which more people are familiar with, there's enough that is different that what you think you might know, you will start to question because the characters are different. and the motivations are different, and the relationships are different. So it's like I think that, and I think it's really well done because there's a lot that's the same. The setup is the same. The location is the same. We have a red dress. Some things are the same. But there's enough that I think even somebody that watched the movie yesterday could come in and be like, oh, wait a minute. I don't know about this person's motivations. Maybe this person isn't who we think this person is. And I think that's a real hallmark of something. Sometimes we update things and the intentions are there and the results are not. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a really tidy, smart. I think keeping it in that time is really great. There's a lot of stakes and circumstances that are elevated because of that time, and I thought that was very smart. It's very stylish. It's such a great. Mm-hmm. It's such a great period to design. It's such a great. The music of that era. I mean, there's lots and lots of great stuff to choose from that way.
I mean, as you say style, that was the next thing I wanted to talk about, because style is so important to it, right? The 1950s London, cigarettes and cocktails and dresses and mid-century mod. Like, how do you do that? How do you bring that style to the stage? Like through working with your designers, through like working with actors to embody that. Like, what is the key to directing? And I think that's the totality of a production style.
Yeah. Well, I think it does start with design. And for me, I'm like a very visual person, so I will gather a lot of imagery, some that is very specific, like shoes of the time, like could be very, very specific. But sometimes it's just sort of atmospheric and vague. And I will share those images with designers. And that's just sort of the leaping off point. This is such, and there's so many great movies from this time, but, I'm a big, I don't know if anyone here watches The Crown. I'm a big watcher of the series The Crown, which chronicles the entire 50s in London. And so, I cribbed a little bit there.
Well, when you go in the theater, I've already called dibs that I get to move into this apartment. When
everybody,
we're done.
It's funny because that's going to be picked clean. People are like, I want this lamp, I want this. So
it's really beautiful.
Everybody wants to live there, except for the horrible murdery part.
Well, I mean, that's why you get a discount, right?
I guess so.
That drives down the property value.
Just burn a little sage and move on.
I thought one of the things the costume designer, Jess Goldstein, who's an amazing costume designer, a Tony-winning legend of the theater, talked about was the brilliant idea of looking at what movie stars wore when they were not in movies.
I love that. So
as a genius, it's like, what was the most stylish person on earth wearing to get groceries? Like stars, they're just like us. Like, I thought that was a brilliant way.
It's so smart. Yeah, so smart. And that was such a great, Jess is somebody that I've wanted to work with for decades. And when that became an opportunity here, I was like, yes. He did not disappoint.
No, he's so lucky. And amazingly, he lives in Asbury Park, too. So that's very exciting. So the murder, right, is right there in the title, right? There's going to be a murder. We've been sold that from the beginning.
One can only hope.
We can hope. I mean, or else we're just false advertising.
Absolutely.
So violence on stage is such a thing. Like, it's so exciting, but it's also like a very ethereal thing, because sometimes you're like, that looks not good, and then other times it looks great. Like, what are some of the things that a layman that might not know about having to stage violence on stage that goes into the thinking of it and planning of it? And then how do you make it safe? Who's in control of what? Like, all the things that then become like this exciting murder on stage.
Well, we always hire a fight director, and it's a very important collaboration with whoever's directing the play to sort of talk about, what the event is, what you want to see, what you don't want to see. I'm a big believer lots of times in things that you don't see are sometimes scarier, both in film and on stage, than seeing, than what is in plain view. So it's a lot of it is like all aspects of theater. There's a tremendous amount of prep. It involves a lot of people. It involves a lot of buy-in from a lot of people, and there should be no fingerprints to the audience. That's always the goal. Like, you shouldn't, I never want to, I mean, in a play like this, I think people do walk into the theater and see that set and go, ooh, that's beautiful, but hopefully it kind of goes away, because then you're just in the story, right? It just sort of sucks you in. And I feel the same way about fights, this is just because I'm maybe ghoulish, but I loved it when I was an actor. I loved to be in fights. I liked to be killed on stage. So I enjoy it, because it's, listen, it's all make-believe, and we all do it, whatever our jobs are, to buy into, the make-believe, to you kind of get to play pretend on a grand scale with a lot of other people helping you out, making, some of the most fun we had here, and the whole thing has been a blast, was figuring out the blood. What is the right content of the blood? Is there too much peanut butter? Is there not enough peanut butter? Is this too sticky? Is this too runny? Is this too, and we did a lot of test runs, and we spent a lot of time doing it. It's really, it's like anything. It's like you hope that you do as much of the detail, deep dive detail that you can, and it goes to the collective experience. And you might not notice what the shoelaces are, but if the shoelaces are right, it goes to the story. And it's the same with the fights. And it's even more so because people can get hurt. So you do have to be, obviously everything goes to safety first, but you also have to sort of create an atmosphere as a director where people are buying in and game and feel safe and taken care of, and then they'll kill for you, and in this case, almost literally. Which is
Excellent. Great. I love those. Every day after rehearsal, you get a rehearsal report, and there's notes about what happened in rehearsal. So those things where it's the blood needs to be thicker, or those are the funniest things to read, because you're this is my day. This is literally what we're deciding in this building. It's so cool.
I have many times a day where I'm I can't believe this is my job. Looking at fake bruises. Yeah. No, that's too purple. I think it would be more red. Yes. Yeah. But it's true. It's that. It's a million little tiny things. And when you have a really great design team, you are free to let them be the experts, and you can hone in on what's important to you and know that they're taking care of all that other stuff.
Excellent. So, in engaging with a property like this, people know the phone, people know the scissors, know the red dress, the iconography of this play in this movie are very, very stark and very, very well known. And you've worked with other pieces like this, like Annie for one, where it's well, there's going to be a shaggy dog and there's going to be a girl in a red dress. But you have a knack for making these things your own, as well as paying homage to the expectations of an audience, right? How do you balance those two things when you go into a production like that? And what makes it new for you and new for the company that's doing it, but also gives the audience the things that they're expecting when they come through?
Well, I think it is important to scratch those itches. Shows are classic for a reason, and we do go for, we want to see that red dress, whether it be on Annie or Margot Wendes.
Just
right?
red dresses in
red
every
dress
show.
For everybody. So it is finding a balance. I mean, I think part of it goes to what I was saying before, which is one of the reasons why I don't repeat, because it's always new to me. I'm making it up. I mean, the experience for me is fresh. So I can be super familiar with the material, if it's a movie or whatever that is. But I mean, Annie is a good example because I have such a long history with that show because I was in it for 2 years as a kid on Broadway, and so it's sort of stamped on and in me in an interesting way. And in that particular case,
I definitely buried that lead.
I sought partners in that didn't know Annie, because I thought it would be a good way to keep me honest, because my sort of compass was always pointing towards that original production. And I think this production is very really honors the original, because I think the original is the best. But I also know that I'm not, that I come with a great amount of bias. So in that particular instance, I was strategic to say I'm going to find a choreographer that not only doesn't know Annie, has never seen Annie, just happened to be a great partner of mine who didn't know the show. But I mean, I love Easter eggs. And I love paying, I'm a big, I love antiques, I love things that have passed down and been touched by other people. I think they just have, I don't know, they just carry a sort of import to them. So I'm excited to try to find those little details that maybe somebody might recognize. But the hope is that it's sort of subliminal, like you're just sort of, it's a sort of a memory that you have. And I think a big key to adaptation, or like doing a revival, is figuring out, in some cases, like you were even talking about this show, some shows are clunkier than other shows, and you sort of figuring out how you honor somebody's memory of it, an audience, somebody's beloved memory of it, but you sort of maybe scoot around some of those less desirable parts in a modern age, where you're like, that really knocks me right out of it. It's interesting even with the violence, because I was thinking about it in terms of, in many great ways and in some challenging ways, we're much more sensitive now about what we see and what we consume, and should there be a trigger warning? There is violence. I mean, it's in the title, so if you do any research and you're buying a ticket to see a play that says murder in it, you're going to probably assume there's a murder in it, but you don't know what you're going to see. But it's interesting that way, and I'm a little old school that way. I'm sort of like, what is it? And whenever I get kind of stuck, I just go back to the text.
Yeah.
What do they want me to do?
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you for that. I want to open it up to some questions from y'all. Yes.
So I went to the matinee today.
Oh.
I didn't pull an audible, but every now and then I did lean in.
Good.
But no spoiler. But there is one thing I was curious about, the interaction of the husband with the ice bucket. Was that like improv?
No, it's in the script.
Oh, wow.
It's in the script.
Good to know.
Yes. And it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I kind of thought, oh gosh, is that going to be, how's that going to play? You'll see it when, there's an ice pick moment or more than one. And it's played great. I've been so impressed, that's another thing too, of like trusting it. And it's also great to have previews because you can adjust stuff. But the audiences have really responded to that. But no, that's what Mr. Hatcher wrote. And I believe that's in the original too. I think Ray Milland in the movie is threatening with an ice pick in some moment.
They didn't have those big cube molds back in the 50s.
They didn't have those. No, not yet. You just had to block it, yeah. But ice picks could do some damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, be scared.
Anyone else? Yes.
When you take a classic and you adapt it, do you have any concerns that you have to be on guard against becoming campy?
Yes.
So how do you?
But I think you can also be campy even if you don't, if you take old material anyway. I don't know, I think, and this is going back to being an actor, I wanted always as an actor the best places you could go is when you could fool yourself into thinking you were really experiencing something. And it all for me, has to come from, a place of honesty. And I'm always trying, I don't know that I'm always succeeding, but I'm always trying to build that or help an actor build that. So if I need an actor to get from one side of the stage to the other, I'm trying to figure out with them what the motivation is to do that, not just because sometimes, and I will say to an actor, like, that just looks like I asked you to do that. Let's figure out a better way to get you there, because it just looks like Jen said, go to the left. So that's that work. And I think if it sounds sort of simple, but it's like you have to believe it. This is an interesting piece because there is a style to this piece. There is a lift to this time. People dressed for dinner, people dressed for cocktails. But that's the truth of that time. That's not camp, that's real. And I think it's great. It's the great fun of for me as sort of creating these worlds, getting to create these worlds. But for actors inhabiting these worlds, they put on those clothes. Mm-hmm. You'd be amazed at what the difference between an actor in a costume and an actor not in a costume, especially in a play like this. I mean, it was very insistent that everybody wear their shoes from day one. I was like, no yoga pants and sneakers in this rehearsal room, because it makes you stand differently. It makes you behave differently. It gives you, there's a formality to this time. And in this particular play, there's a lot of secrecy and deception and performative behavior. So there's almost a play within the play of people deceiving each other. So you never quite know who's full of beans and who isn't. And that's part of the fun of this play. And I think it's also part of the fun of acting in this play, because they are also managing that and negotiating that.
It's so funny, like to just keep riffing on that, like things like hatography and gloveography, like
right. Well, we don't live with those things anymore, but those were, you have to really do it over and over and over again to be fluent in it, the way somebody would be in 1955 with a hat.
Yeah, it's so neat. Just walking in with a fedora, like, what do you do with it? You know, it's just it's as easy for Tony as it is for me to drop my keys in the bowl. But like, it's just so interesting, like that effortlessness for something that would be like, I don't know what to do with this. Anybody got a thing? And that's gloves
that's
for
absolutely
certain.
true. All those things, learning to negotiate all those things, and then really incorporate them, and they are very, very valuable tools in terms of building a world and building a character.
And the one like deep-seated Easter egg that I'm really excited about in this is that someone has to actually dial a phone.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a whole generation of people. They're like, what are they doing?
Listen, I remember being in a hotel with my daughter, and my daughter picked up a phone and didn't know what a dial tone was, and said, "What's this sound?" I was like, "Oh my God, it's a freaking dial tone." Yeah. Well,
it's always that interminable thing where like you have to dial the right amount of numbers, but you can't draw any nines because it takes too long to get back.
And the big joke is that
like
if
one,
it's
two, two, one.
If it's a quick part of the play, I'm like, the number is 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And if I need more time, then make it.
You get an 8 in there.
Put an 8 or a 9 in. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was just curious. You were talking about how this play was an original classic and then got adapted, and then you asked another person to adapt it further on. But as a director, do you ever leave a stamp of your own every time you do it? Like every director who works with it, does the director like to leave a stamp in it, which is more individualistic for that play?
Well, I mean, there's a million little tiny details and things that I think every director brings to whatever they're doing. I mean, it starts obviously with casting, just who you're choosing to inhabit these roles. I really, that's such an interesting thing, and I think it's interesting in terms of also like new work or doing an old play and modernizing it or putting your stamp on it. I hope so. I think so. I think it's my job to be invisible. I really think, for me, this is my taste. And listen, there are a lot of incredible directors that completely go the other way, and it's this world that they're creating, and they will take an old piece or a new piece and kind of, run it up the flagpole in a completely different way. I'm very text-driven, and I want to serve the story. So I think it is a collection of a million details and a million conversations that start months and months, sometimes years ahead of a production, that inform that and evolve with that. And so, if I have that big idea, I would be more inclined to sort of bury it. Now, I mean, it would be there, but not to be like, hey, look what I did. Because I feel like it knocks you out of the story. For me, and this is just a taste thing, even in terms of what I enjoy going to the theater. I want to go to the theater and it's very hard to do this when you're in the theater, but forget. Like, my hallmark of something that's great is when I stop looking to see how it's done, because I'm always a little bit like, oh, what are they doing now? And when I just fall into it, and that's what's the magic about live theater. We're having this communal experience together. And it's different than Netflix and chill, when you can put it on pause and go get another Diet Coke, right? Or take a phone call. You're in it. And so what I'm always trying to create is something that is so compelling that the world falls away and you are in that apartment with them. And So that's kind of where I try to live.
Thank you.
Excellent. You had a question? Yes?
I did. It was also about adaptation, and I kind of love what you said about wanting to adapt it to give the main character more agency. And I think about the plays that I've seen, and I'll just go be in the city and go to matinee. And I remember years ago going to Carousel and thinking, God, I wish that had been modernized in some way or adapted, because the main character is abused by the husband, and the way they try to modernize it is by putting different people of different races in the main characters' roles, but it also didn't work as one is being dragged away by the cops. I couldn't. It was interesting. And then I see things like Cabaret or West Side Story, which I love the original, and seeing Cabaret recently, I thought, I forget that it's 1940s, 1930s Berlin. I feel like it's too futuristic. So
It's a very fine, well, it's all taste, right? And it's a very fine line. And some things age better than other things, I mean, we're talking about Annie probably more than we should be, but like Annie plays so great because it's not because it isn't political, because there's actually quite a lot of politics in Annie, but there's a neutrality to that in a way. We're not, I mean, Carousel is infamously tough because she's in an abusive relationship and she stays in that relationship. But people are in abusive relationships now and stay in those relationships. So that's not old, unfortunately. So I mean, I think when you're handling some stuff, and listen, some stuff you look at and you're like, I don't know how to sell this now. I can't do this. But I've worked on stuff where, and that's a great challenge to be like, how do I tell this story and bring all the familiar things that make you love this show and why the show gets done over, and kind of either lessen some of that, take out some of the thornier bits that make you fall out of the play. That's the whole thing for me. It's not about like trying to erase, there's like lots of complicated situations then. It's also, there's something really interesting about looking at things that were popular in the 50s, whatever the era is. Like they shouldn't be erased, but it's always an interesting challenge, and it's why I always think about when I'm doing a revival of something, like, why are we doing this now? Like, what does this piece of theater say to an audience that's viewing it now? It's instantly modern because it's our modern sensibility. I mean, the world is different from what it was last summer. Our points of view are different. Our concerns are different. Our fears are different. So, we're always changing, and the audience brings that into the room. So that's a consideration, and always challenging, I think, and interesting.
Do we have any other questions? Yes. Sorry.
Has anything changed much during the previous week?
Have we had any changes during
Yeah,
previews?
we've had a couple of changes. I mean, I will say, and I'm going to toot your horn a little bit here, I have worked at a lot of theaters, and especially coming out of COVID, which was such a trying time, obviously, for everybody. But the theater was really, it was very, very tough coming back from that. And this theater is one of the best run theaters I have ever worked at. It's just a really fantastic team. The staff is great. The craftspeople, the shops, I mean, just really, really great. So we came into the show in really excellent shape. A lot of times, you're playing kind of catch up, and the job is to bake the cake. The cake's got to get baked. You put it in the oven. It's got to be ready at a certain time. That's what it is. And what's been wonderful about this experience is we have had a chance, because we came into the tech process, like exactly where we should be, and have had a few previews and ample rehearsal to be able to refine and polish. We're still in rehearsal. We have rehearsal tomorrow. I'm still giving notes. We're still changing cues. We're still honing things. We had a really great rehearsal yesterday without a performance, a whole day, to just absorb what we had seen over the first two previews and make those adjustments. And sometimes they're like these little tiny blocking things, like they can be really small that maybe even somebody that had seen the play before wouldn't necessarily know, but I think it goes to the collective. So any time for me that I can get back in, I can get back to the actors, I can really polish the tech is very exciting. And unfortunately, more and more rare right now, just at this time. And so it's been one of the, I mean, the whole experience has been wonderful, but one of the best things about being here.
No, thank you, and it's an amazing testament to all the amazing people that work here, because I think like that is the goal, right? So that the artists, can be their best selves and do their work in an incredible way.
It's a really remarkable task.
We have one last question. I think we can grab it. Yeah.
So you've talked a lot about the process before you got here and all the people that you met with. But I'm really curious about your personal process when it comes to the blocking. Did you sit with the play and put all your notes in, or is it more organic when you get there?
It depends on the play. So for a play like this, which is one set and 5 actors, I do not pre-block. I mean, I might sort of think about where I think I want people to be for certain things, especially if there's like a technical aspect to it. Like I thought about where I wanted the murder to be. I did think about that. But generally in a play like this, when you have enough time, it's very different in like a big musical or a play that has a lot of people and a lot of moving parts or a lot of scene changes. That's a more technical thing. And then I will sit down. In a musical, I will storyboard it. I literally will storyboard it. And then it changes. But I always have to have, like a sort of a Bible and a map going in. But one of the things that I love about working on a play this size is, what I will do is I'll let the actors take a first pass and kind of and I'll say, like, don't worry about the picture. Don't worry about if we can see you. Go where you would go as a human being in this moment. And they're often like, really? Can I really do that? And I'm like, yeah, do that. Because I'll learn a lot from that. And, then I'll change it. but even now, like there's things I was changing just in terms of, we're not quite hearing that moment because your back is to us. So that's a big moment. I need you to be over here. I love staging. I think it's such a complementary thing to the text because I'm always trying to make the picture, make the text rise up. So we hear it in a certain way or we're moving in a certain way. So it's great when on a play like this where you can be guided by actors because they're inhabiting it. They know things I don't know because they're saying the words and pretending to be the people. So I try to use them as the sort of the first pass gauge. And then, we kind of tweak. But we were making changes today. I made some changes yesterday. We made a bunch of changes. So that's a process.
Well, the process is ongoing until Friday when we open, and then it is set until we close. But it's been a wonderful time having Jenn here at Two River. This production is gorgeous. I hope you get to see it. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much to everybody here for making this possible. Thank you all for coming. Come check us out. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.